The mother-in-law had just dumped her son-in-law's body in the lake the night before, yet there he was the next day, standing right in front of her. Her daughter and son-in-law immediately jumped in their car to flee, while Kate desperately pleaded for an explanation. But the heartless couple drove off without a word. Kate was both furious and terrified. If her son-in-law was still alive, then who the hell had she thrown into the lake? Fighting to stay calm, she tried to piece together what had happened. Her daughter, who hadn't been in touch for ages, had suddenly shown up last night in tears, claiming she'd accidentally killed her husband during an argument over something trivial. Without thinking twice, Kate had covered for her daughter by hauling the body to a lake miles away and dumping it in the dead of night. But that wasn't the end of it. Her daughter then explained that the fight had started because her husband owed someone $5,000. If the creditor didn't get his money, he'd come looking for the husband, which would inevitably lead to a police investigation. To avoid any scrutiny, Kate had reluctantly handed over her last savings to pay off the debt. Looking back now, it was crystal clear. Her daughter and son-in-law had conned her out of $5,000. But what really haunted Kate was that corpse. As if on cue, the very next afternoon, the creditor, John, showed up at her door again. Kate tried to make him leave, but somehow John knew about the body in the lake. She had no choice but to let him in. It turned out her son-in-law really did owe John $5,000. When he couldn't pay up, John had talked him into scamming his mother-in-law. What John hadn't expected was that Kate would not only fork over the cash, but also take it upon herself to dispose of a body. When Kate frantically asked whose body it was, John said it was just some street thug called Buffalo who'd happened to drop dead. Then he cut to the chase. He wanted $500,000, or he'd call 911 and report her crimes. Kate didn't have that kind of money. Desperate, she decided to commit insurance fraud. In the early hours of the morning, she used a flare gun to set her stable on fire, having heard that fires started by flare guns were untraceable. After the fire was put out, Kate thought she'd pulled it off perfectly until the sheriff showed up at her door. The firefighters had found the flare gun cartridge in the stable, identifying it as arson. Worse, they discovered a charred male body in the room above the stable. You've probably figured out what happened by now. John was quickly arrested and interrogated. The police suspected he'd murdered Buffalo and torched the stable to destroy the evidence. Kate, the stable owner, testified that she'd hired John as a ranch hand and had advanced him $5,000 in wages. She claimed Buffalo had come to the ranch looking for John before the incident, and the two had gotten into a heated confrontation. When the sheriff produced surveillance footage of John buying the flare gun, John finally realized Kate had set him up. He struggled frantically, but it was too late. He never could have imagined that Kate, with help from a friend, had fished the body out of the lake and planted it in the fire.